Haunted by fire-laced dreams and a name buried in legend, Revan Skywalker walks the streets of Coruscant as more than just a boy. He is a memory bleeding through flesh, a forgotten warlord awakening inside a slave-born Jedi. While his younger brother Anakin marvels at the city's glow, Revan sees only prophecy and shadow stirring in the Force. Visions of betrayal crackle in his sleep, where a phantom named Malik calls him by a name that once bent empires. The Jedi Council watches with wary eyes, Padme with quiet wonder, as Revan stands between past and future, neither fully Jedi nor entirely Sith, a scalpel where others were hammers. His power, immense but fractured, whispers of destinies undone and wars yet to begin. And in the distance, the Starforge stirs. In this chapter, Revan and Padme share a brief but intriguing interaction. As Revan grapples with the haunting visions of his past life as Darth Revan, Padme feels an undeniable pull towards him, sensing the storm within him. Meanwhile, the Jedi Council remains divided on how to handle his mysterious powers and his potential as either a Jedi or something far darker. Revan, unlike others, does not fear the dark side, and his connection to the Force only grows stronger, blending both light and dark in ways that even Yoda cannot fully comprehend. As Revan's past life bleeds through his present existence, the Force becomes a battlefield, one where loyalty, power, and destiny collide. The tension between Revan's complex inner world and the external forces shaping his fate becomes palpable, leaving the reader on edge as they witness the shadow of his former self loom ever larger. Born from the Force, he carries the potential to rival the legendary Grandmaster. His skills destined to reach levels that might even match those of Luke Skywalker, who once defeated an ancient, almost godlike entity. But whether he can surpass such a legend remains uncertain. At this stage, however, he's just a boy, and his true nature will emerge once his memories are restored. Meanwhile, an unexpected twist happens when Revan, who initially considered taking his mother's place and staying on Tatooine, realizes that this choice would shift the focus too far from the main story, potentially dragging things out for years. In Chapter 10, after an eventful escape, Revan, Anakin, and Jar Jar follow Save the Decoy Queen through the corridors. Despite the absurdity of using a young girl as a human shield, Revan understands the harsh realities of leadership under constant assassination attempts. Anakin, in his innocent curiosity, pesters Sabe with questions, eventually drawing out answers from her. As they journey through the city, Revan watches the bustling life outside, noticing the chaos and the human side of the struggle, the women in bars, hoping for a new life elsewhere, fueling the undercurrent of their harsh world. Tatooine was no place for the sane, it was a prison of sand for the forgotten, the enslaved, the desperate, or those twisted enough to rule it. He had crossed paths with the Hutt Lord only during deliveries or race days, never truly grasping the depth of the creature's power, and doubting Anakin did either. Yet in that cruel desert, one image clung to his thoughts. His mother, still trapped in that crumbling hovel they'd called home for over a decade. She wasn't truly alone. HK was there, lethal even without arms, unlike C-3PO, whose defenses were laughable at best. Still, HK brought him comfort. Watto believed the droid his, but in truth, the machine served another purpose, silently guarding the shop while Revan schemed in secret. He wasn't about to abandon her. Jedi dreams or not, once the path was open, he would return to free her, and the droids too. Now that he was free, Revan had the chance to earn a real salary, enough to buy his mother from her cruel owner. But if that failed, he wouldn't hesitate to take drastic measures. Though he had never taken a life in cold blood before, the idea of killing to free his mother from slavery seemed a small price to pay. As he pondered this, a cold voice snapped him back to reality. The group had arrived at the Queen's chambers, and he watched as Sabi went inside to deliver their arrival. The hall was nearly empty, save for a few guards in dark blue silk uniform. They wore matching helmets and carried rifles, embodying the city's opulence. As Revan stood there, lost in thought, he couldn't help but wonder about the possibility of seeing Padme again. Anakin's voice cut through the air, pulling Revan's attention as he noticed him adjusting his tunic, smoothing out the wrinkles before they entered the Queen's antechamber. "We'll be fine," Revan reassured him, affectionately tousling Anakin's hair, causing the younger boy to grumble. "Just remember, when we're in there, keep your focus. The Queen is here to ask the Senate for help against the Trade Federation and to free her people." Anakin's lips pressed into a tight line, his frustration apparent. "I know, I'm not an idiot." Revan's chuckle echoed softly. Well, that's a matter of opinion, he teased, only for Anakin to retaliate with a playful punch to his arm. Revan couldn't help but smirk as he teased his younger brother. Just try not to get too excited when you spot your girlfriend, he said, watching Anakin's cheeks flush at the comment. It was amusing to Revan how quickly Anakin had become smitten by someone he barely knew, but then again, Tatooine wasn't exactly a hotspot for girls his age. Maybe Anakin just had a thing for older women. Anakin, embarrassed but determined, shot back, "Padme is not my girlfriend," Revan, grinning, couldn't resist the tease. "But I'm sure you'd like to fix that, so you can spend more time with your angel." Anakin turned even redder, his mind racing to find a clever response. Luckily for him, their conversation was interrupted when Sabe returned with her usual cool expression. "The Queen is in talks with the Senator," she informed the group. "You're to wait in the corner until summoned by the Queen, and don't make a sound." The atmosphere shifted as they silently obeyed her command. She didn't want a word unless spoken to first or command, sharp, cold. Anakin swallowed hard and nodded, uncertain if they had offended her. While Revan answered quickly, eyes locked on the handmaiden who had recently pretended to be royalty. With a final narrowed glare, she led them into a regal chamber lined with red carpet, placing them by a glass door that revealed the Queen no longer draped in black, but now in a golden green kimono and fan-shaped crown, sitting still as a statue. Her handmaidens, too, had changed into deep red hooded robes, half their faces veiled. A senator paced before the Queen mid-sentence when they arrived. As the handmaiden slipped away into the room beyond, Revan subtly used the Force, holding the door ajar just enough to let the conversation spill through, words drenched in venom. There was no civility, only politics. Palpatine stopped pacing, his voice heavy with disdain as he declared the Republic a crumbling echo of its former self. The Senate bloated with power-hungry delegates clawing for personal gain. Revan, lips tight, snorted silently. What a surprise! Politicians being selfish across millennia. Inwardly, he scoffed at the idea that Palpatine was any different, his motives cloaked in the same self-interest he condemned. Yet Padme's voice whispered through the bond, soft but firm, defending the Senator's legacy and tireless service to Naboo, her faith unwavering that Valorum's leadership backed by Palpatine's effort would bring their world the aid it so desperately needed. The tension is palpable as the Chancellor's futile hope clashes with the harsh reality of the Senate's powerlessness. In a moment of brutal honesty, the mysterious figure warns the royal figure that the Senate will not act on the invasion today. While the Chancellor may hold on to optimism, the truth is that his position is under siege. Accusations of corruption, crafted scandals, and a suffocating bureaucracy have rendered him powerless. The bureaucrats now hold the reins, and the galaxy's fate teeters on their indifferent watch. The Queen's eyes locked onto Palpatine, her voice filled with urgency. "What options do we have, Senator?" Palpatine paused, his fingers drumming on the table as though weighing the gravity of the situation. Then, with a measured tone, he replied, "Our best choice would be to push for the election of a stronger Supreme Chancellor. Someone who can rein in the bureaucrats, enforce the laws, and bring us justice." He paced slowly, his gray hair falling over his brow as he stopped right in front of her, his gaze intense. "You could call for a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum." A shadow passed over Padme's face at the suggestion, her thoughts clearly troubled. "But he has been our strongest supporter," she said, her voice thick with reluctance. The weight of betrayal hung in the air as she processed his words, torn between loyalty and the pursuit of power. The Queen, her voice filled with urgency and frustration, demanded, "Is there no other way?" The Chancellor, caught in a moment of hesitation, could only reply with a regretful sigh. "Our only other option would be to submit the matter to the courts." But the Queen, sharp and resolute, cut him off, her tone rising with anger. "We don't have time for that. The courts are no faster than the Senate. People are dying every day while we wait. The Federation must be stopped, and we must act now before it gets worse." Palpatine fixed the Queen with a stern gaze, the kind a father reserves for a child on the brink of disobedience. He spoke with cold finality, urging her to accept the Trade Federation's grip, at least for now. But she met his gravity with quiet defiance, refusing to yield. From a nearby chamber, Revan watched the silent war of wills, his eyes narrowed. Though no friend to politicians, he found the Chancellor's logic disturbingly sound. Without Senate aid, what could two Jedi and a single soldier hope to achieve against an army vast enough to subjugate a planet? The numbers whispered hopeless odds, yet Revan, haunted by battles not his own, stood unmoved, caught between the echo of ancient wars and the quiet thanks spoken in his name. Revan felt the weight of Padme's voice in his mind, sharp and bitter, a reminder of the guilt he carried. "It really means a lot," she said, her tone tinged with resentment. "I don't mean to sound like a pessimist," she added, but he couldn't help but reply. "Could have fooled me." Revan tried to defend himself. "Look, don't take it out on me. I'm not the one that invaded your world, am I?" Padme fell silent, and Revan continued. "You can shout at me all you want, but without an army to defend your world, I don't know what you expect me to say." She asked, "So, you don't think the Senate will act either?" Revan hesitated before answering, "Depends." "On what?" she pressed. Padme was resolute, challenging Revan with sharp words. "Do you want the truth, or should I lie to make you feel better?" Revan responded calmly, not backing down. "I'm not some fragile flower that needs protection. I can handle the truth," Padme asserted, standing tall. After a brief pause, Revan relented, his voice steady as he spoke. "Fine. The Senate won't agree to send aid. It's unlikely the Republic will risk an all-out war against the Federation for one planet." The weight of his words hung in the air, a stark reflection of the reality they faced. In the midst of conflict, a troubled soul faces an impossible choice. Naboo has fallen, its fate sealed by the Federation. With no clear path forward, some suggest surrender. But one man refuses, even if it means the destruction of his people. He turns to the Jedi, hoping for help, but only 2 stand ready to fight, while the rest have lost their warrior spirit. Desperation brews as the cries of his people echo, but hope rests on a distant Senate if they will allow it. In a tense moment, a character faces a choice that seems impossible: either submit to the Federation's demands or hope that the Senate will act. But then, a third option emerges, an unexpected move that might change everything. A weary sigh escapes, signaling the weight of the decision at hand. The world is on the line, and the path ahead is unclear, but the character knows one thing for sure. This isn't over yet. The plot thickens, and the stakes rise higher. In a galaxy on the brink of war, Naboo stands defenseless, its peaceful people unprepared for the invasion that follows. As the Trade Federation moves in, the conversation turns to how the people of Naboo, aided by their amphibious neighbors, must defend their home and force the invaders to answer for their crimes. Meanwhile, in the Jedi Council room, Qui-Gon reveals the truth behind Revan's identity. The revelation leaves the room in stunned silence, as everyone absorbs the weight of what has been shared. Qui-Gon, struggling to comprehend the implications, begins to piece together that Revan's visions are not mere dreams, but fragments of memories from a past life, memories that were meant to be forgotten, yet have resurfaced. With the Force guiding his understanding, Qui-Gon begins to see the pieces of a life once lived. A time when Revan was trained as a Jedi and formed close bonds with others who would shape his destiny. As the Council wrestles with the truth, the question remains, who is Revan truly meant to be? He finally understood why the names had echoed in his mind. These weren't just ghosts, they were legends. Darth Malak, the merciless master of the Starforge, once apprenticed to the dreaded Darth Revan, a name buried in flame and shadow. And then there was the exile Mitra Surik, scarred by war and wielding silence like a blade. She fought beside Revan and Malak in the Mandalorian Wars, once a trusted general, now remembered by the Mandalorians, not with hatred, but with reverence and dread as the Bane of Malachor. Her soul had been seared by the mass Shadow Driver, a superweapon that tore through fleets and souls alike, leaving her a wound in the Force, a walking scar etched into history. Qui-Gon's thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a shout, pulling his attention to Ki-Adi-Mundi, who was now on his knees, shaking his head in disbelief. Are you seriously telling us that not only was the Queen's assassin a Sith Lord, but there's another one we didn't know about? And that this one is possibly the most notorious Sith Lord of all? The one responsible for bringing the Sith back into the galaxy almost 4,000 years ago? And you think he's possessing someone? Qui-Gon immediately cut him off, his voice firm. I never said Revan's spirit is possessing anyone. I said I believe he's been reincarnated. Ki-Adi-Mundi retorted with disbelief. That's absurd. We live, we die, and when we die, we return to the Force. There's no reincarnation. In a tense exchange, Qui-Gon and Adi Gallia find themselves on opposite sides of a debate. Qui-Gon remains steadfast, asserting that no Jedi, Not even those in the highest council truly know what happens after death. He suggests that Revan's past, full of enigmas and contradictions, is a testament to the extraordinary nature of the man. Adigalia, ever the voice of reason, counters, expressing doubt about the idea that Revan's legacy is merely a coincidence. She questions whether the name is tied to Revan's dark past, suggesting that his parents might have been aware of his history and named him to honor that memory. Or perhaps, as Master Yoda might say, they simply liked the name. The conversation hangs in the air, shrouded in mystery, leaving more questions than answers. Qui-Gon calmly explained to the group, neither Revan nor Anakin had fathers. Both were conceived by the midichlorians. He paused as the others absorbed the revelation. And since he was young, Revan has had dreams, or rather nightmares, of Darth Revan's past. Mace Windu's voice cut through the tension. Nightmares? What exactly about? Qui-Gon's answer was chilling. The torture Revan endured at the hands of Vitiate and his time as Dark Lord of the Sith. A few Jedi stiffened, the name Vitiate carrying a weight that others struggled to understand. But for Revan, these weren't mere dreams, they were memories, pieces of a life once lived, echoing through his mind like whispers in the dark. Obi-Wan voiced what everyone was thinking, and Eth Koth, still watching from the doorway, added that it wasn't surprising the Padawan hadn't heard of it. The name Vitiate was just the title he adopted when he became a Sith and declared himself Emperor of the old Sith Empire. His real name was Tenebrae, and after the hero of Tython supposedly ended him, he took over another body and rebranded himself as Valkorion, building a new empire that operated separately from the Sith, then steamrolled both the Republic and the Sith with ease. Plo Koon, not exactly thrilled with the history detour, cut in and asked about the boy's dreams, to which the reply came, each night, he relives a life that came before. Revan Skywalker, a boy once a slave from Tatooine, now finds himself haunted by vivid visions of a past life as a galactic warlord. As he journeys through Coruscant with his younger brother Anakin, he begins to piece together fragments of this forgotten identity, memories of a life lived on the Starforge, where betrayal and brotherhood intertwined, and the Force was manipulated to its darkest limits. But these aren't mere dreams. They are glimpses into something far deeper, a past filled with tragedy and power. Amid the political turmoil, Revan stands on the brink of destiny, caught between being a Jedi and the possible reincarnation of Darth Revan, whose life was shattered by the very darkness he once embraced. The Jedi Council debates his future, while Padme Amidala becomes quietly drawn to the boy who carries both galaxies and shadows within him. In the silence of his soul, Revan struggles with his identity, opening up to Qui-Gon about the fear of what he is becoming, while the whispers of ancient forces continue to invade his dreams. All of this unfolds as Revan confronts the haunting specter of his former apprentice and the memories that bind him to the past, setting the stage for a conflict that will change the course of the galaxy. In a moment of tension, Qui-Gon gently reminded the Jedi Master that Revan's past was not so simple, revealing how the fallen Sith, once known as Alec, had once been his best friend. This loss had haunted Revan, carrying with it the weight of regret, a burden that never truly left him. Despite the Council's attempts to console him, offering wise words about failure and its lessons, the sting of not being able to save his closest companion, his Padawan, lingered. Though he had told Revan that Malak's dark path was his own choice, Qui-Gon understood that only someone who had experienced such failure could truly know the torment it brought. As the pain of his past echoed in his mind, Qui-Gon pushed those thoughts aside, shifting focus back to the pressing matters at hand. Revan has always been haunted by visions of his past life, a life that he can barely remember yet feels deeply connected to. These vivid dreams take him back to the time when the Order found him and brought him to the temple. It was there that he met his companions, Alec and Mitra Surik, who would later be remembered as the Exile. He even went as far as to retrain himself by recalling these dreams memories of his old master, Kriya, and his time under her training. The Council listens intently as Revan speaks, but one member, Ki-Adi-Mundi, questions the nature of this master, wondering if it was indeed the woman who became known as Darth Traya, a former Sith Lord who nearly eradicated the Jedi Order. But Yaddle, another member of the Council, defends Kreia, stating that she was falsely accused of crimes she never committed. As the debate rages on, Revan remains conflicted, unsure of whether he is a Jedi or the dark echo of Darth Revan returning to the galaxy once again. The Order blamed her for the actions of her students. Regardless of the past, the Serena Male spoke again. She still committed countless atrocities across the galaxy during her time as a Sith. No one forced her to join the dark side. She chose it, and the galaxy paid the price. He looked at Qui-Gon. And you want us to train a boy who could be her most famous student, the one responsible for bringing the Sith back into the galaxy? If not for Revan, none of us would be here. Oppo Rancisis spoke, his voice quiet like Yadel's. Are we forgetting that even during his 300 years of torture, he influenced Vitiate's mind to stop him from attacking, giving the Order and the Republic time to rebuild? In the midst of a heated Jedi Council debate, Master Plo Koon interrupts to remind everyone that, despite the disagreements, Master Mundy's point holds weight. Revan may have played a pivotal role in the return of the Sith. However, Master Eth Koth sharply dismisses this notion, arguing that the Sith would have inevitably returned, with or without Revan's influence. Still, the Serena cuts through the back and forth, asserting that Revan is indeed the one responsible for bringing the Sith back into the galaxy, an undeniable fact that no one can ignore. Revan, a young boy burdened by the fragments of a past life, is on the cusp of understanding who he truly is, though the truth eludes him. His dreams aren't mere visions. They are remnants of a forgotten identity filled with war, betrayal, and power. The boy believes these dreams are glimpses of his future, unaware that they are echoes from his past as Darth Revan, a notorious galactic warlord. While the Jedi Council debates his place in the Force, Revan's younger brother, Anakin, watches in awe as his sibling grapples with the weight of destiny. The tension grows as Revan confronts the possibility that he may not be who he thinks he is, and a shadow looms over him in the form of a dark and haunting figure from his past. The deeper Revan delves into his visions, the more uncertain he becomes about what's real and what's merely a shadow of his former life. Revan stood in the quiet of the night, his mind racing with memories that felt like they belonged to someone else. As he stepped out into the desert, leaving behind the warmth of his home, a part of him felt the weight of destiny tugging at his soul. Following his every step from a distance, Qui-Gon was cautious not to alarm him. When Revan entered a secluded cave, the mystery deepened. Inside, he began calling out to a voice that echoed from the shadows, a voice deeply connected to the Force. Surprised by the revelation, Qui-Gon asked him who he was speaking to, only to learn that Revan had been conversing with something or someone who had always been there, a presence he could never fully explain. The questions piled up. Why the dreams of the masked man? Why the name that echoed from a past long buried? What did it mean for the boy who stood at the crossroads of fate, haunted by his forgotten past? Gon's words struck the chamber with quiet weight as he recounted what he had witnessed, how Revan, in the dead of night, had left the safety of his home and wandered into the desert alone. Intrigued, the Jedi Master had followed from afar, watching the boy disappear into a cave that pulsed with the Force. Inside, Revan wasn't meeting anyone. He was speaking to something, or someone, unseen. A voice that only he could hear. A presence bound to that place, ancient and powerful. When Qui-Gon confronted him, Revan calmly admitted the voice had always been with him, whispering in dreams and fire. He asked it the same question that haunted his every breath. Why did he share a name with the masked warrior who once plunged galaxies into chaos? In the midst of Revan's unsettling dreams, which feel less like visions and more like memories from a past life, the Jedi Council debates his fate. Revan, a boy from Tatooine, finds himself plagued by glimpses of his former self, a galactic warlord who once wielded immense power on the Starforge. As the dreams become more vivid, his connection to the Force grows more intense, but so does his fear. Some believe these visions are a lesson from the Force itself, perhaps a punishment for his past. Others question whether Revan truly has repaid his past sins. Despite his attempts to reconcile with his former identity, he is haunted by a dark past that even the Jedi struggle to understand. Meanwhile, Padme Amidala is drawn to the boy who carries a heavy burden, his silence concealing the weight of galaxies. As Revan faces his destiny, one thing is certain: the Force has chosen him, but for what purpose? Is he truly a Jedi in training? Or is he the return of Darth Revan, reborn to fulfill an ancient prophecy? The mystery grows deeper, and Revan must confront his past, his future, and the shadow of a name that won't fade. In a tense moment within the Jedi Council, Qui-Gon defends Revan, speaking of his past, revealing that it was only after the Mandalorian War that Revan and his companion turned to the dark side. Despite this, he argues that Revan's previous actions do not dictate his future. However, Mundy dismisses his words, questioning whether the Council should risk repeating history by training Revan. Plo Koon interjects, asking if doing nothing is the solution, prompting Qui-Gon to quickly deny such a suggestion. The conversation hangs in the balance as the Council faces a dilemma that could alter the fate of the galaxy. The Jedi Council is divided as they face a dilemma involving a young boy named Revan, whose past life as a dark warlord haunts him. The air is thick with uncertainty as one council member suggests drastic measures to prevent the rise of the Sith once again. "Do you mean to kill him?" Mace asks, noticing the tension from Qui-Gon. The debate intensifies, with some members questioning the morality of such actions. Others argue that regardless of Revan's true nature, the Order must do anything necessary to prevent another Sith from taking control. The fear looms if history were to repeat itself and Revan were to rise again, who would bear the blame? Revan stands at the crossroads of destiny, his mind torn between the past and the present, as the galaxy watches, waiting for a decision that could change everything. In the midst of a tense debate, Saesee Tiin coldly voiced his agreement with the notion that once a Sith, always a Sith, stressing the Jedi's duty to destroy them, no matter their past. Plo Koon, on the other hand, offered a different perspective, suggesting that with proper guidance, Revan could be redeemed, becoming a great Jedi again, capable of teaching the next generation. Yet, the question remained, what if those visions of the past triggered memories of the darkness that once consumed him? Adi Gallia, frustrated by the back and forth, sighed, feeling as if they were merely spinning in circles, unable to find resolution. Revan's fall to the dark side wasn't driven by a hunger for power, but by the manipulations of a dark figure. But others see things differently. One among them, a Jedi, believes Revan was always on the edge of darkness, that the power of the Sith always beckoned him. They recall his past betrayals, his willingness to sacrifice anything for power, even if that means taking a life. This Jedi's proposal? Destroy the growing threat before it's too late. But another, more ancient Jedi, challenges him. What they're facing isn't a child, but a Sith. A deadly force that must be eradicated before it can rise and wreak havoc. A tense debate brews as the lines between light and darkness blur, and the fate of a potential Sith lies in their hands. The council chamber crackled with tension, as one voice rose above the rest. "We do not murder children because of what they could become," said Adi Gallia, her tone edged with steel. But the counterpoint struck fast. "It is not a child," came the cold reply, "it is a Sith." Silence cracked when another stood in defiance, reminding them that Revan had once turned back from darkness and helped end a galactic war. Could any of you survive 300 years of torment and still return? The challenge hung in the air. One voice dared an answer, "If I had to." But the Grandmaster's cane struck the floor, final and unyielding. Enough. The word cut through the storm like a blade, ending the debate as even the stars outside seemed to fall still. In a tense gathering, the Jedi Council deliberates on a boy whose presence stirs ancient memories. As the Grandmaster speaks, urging the group to meet the boy individually, a sense of unease fills the room. With a quiet decision, the Council nods in agreement, acknowledging the weight of what's at stake. Mace Windu concurs, trusting the Grandmaster's judgment. The maverick Jedi, Qui-Gon, is tasked with retrieving the youngest, setting the stage for a pivotal encounter with the Jedi High Council. But as Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan depart, an ominous feeling lingers. This meeting might be more than they bargained for. The Sith twisted the Force to their own desires, corrupting it until their bodies began to decay. The stronger they were in the dark side, the more they withered. No one tainted by such darkness could ever be the chosen one. But what if Revan's return wasn't natural? Mace questioned, his stern expression hardening. The records from our ancestors show how the ancient Sith used rituals to defy death. Just look at Vitiate, who did it time and again. Perhaps Revan did the same, Plo Koon interjected, reminding them. Vitiate was Revan's greatest foe. I find it hard to believe Revan would stoop to such methods. Revan Skywalker is a boy caught between two lives, a slave freed from Tatooine and a warlord from a past he can barely remember. As he lives in Coruscant with his younger brother Anakin, he is haunted by vivid visions of battles and betrayals, fragments of a life once led on the Starforge, where power and darkness reigned. His fate becomes uncertain as the Jedi Council debates his destiny, questioning whether he is merely a young Jedi in training or the reincarnation of the Dark Lord, Darth Revan. Meanwhile, Padme Amidala finds herself drawn to Revan, sensing the weight of the galaxies within him, though there's darkness hidden in his soul. As the Council wrestles with fear and uncertainty, Revan stands at the edge of his destiny, unsure whether he is the hero or the shadow of a forgotten legend. In a time of great uncertainty, Revan stands at the crossroads of destiny. A boy once a slave, now finding himself entangled in a mystery far greater than he could have ever imagined. With every step through Coruscant's grand halls, memories of battles fought and betrayals long past claw at his mind. As his brother Anakin watches with awe, Revan's past life as the infamous warlord and his connection to the Force become undeniable, though shrouded in darkness. The Jedi Council, troubled by his presence, is divided on how to handle the boy who may very well be the reincarnation of the legendary Sith, Darth Revan. Yet Revan's heart is torn as well. He is haunted by dreams of fire, betrayal, and a name that clings to his very soul. With the fate of the galaxy at stake and whispers from the past lingering like shadows, Revan must confront his past and face the truth, whether he is a Jedi in training or the return of a force too dark to reckon with. Amidst it all, Padme feels an unspoken pull toward him, sensing the weight of the universe in his silence. Left alone after Qui-Gon's brief reassurance, he found himself lost, unsure of his place in the Jedi world. The others seemed distant, almost as if they saw him as a mere nuisance, not a fellow Jedi in training. Their eyes pierced through him as if they were searching deeper into parts of him he wasn't ready to face. The moment Qui-Gon was gone, their questioning began sharp and relentless, with no attempt to ease his discomfort. It felt like they had no care for his well-being, only that he was something to tolerate until Qui-Gon's return. They were nothing like the Jedi from the stories he had heard as a child. Fortunately, thanks to Qui-Gon's brief introductions, he was able to match faces to names. The two who stood out to him were the Elder Yoda and the commanding Mace Windu, both figures of authority in the Order, though Yoda's frailty made him wonder if Jedi could ever retire. He quickly dismissed the thought. The interrogation continued, each question more probing than the last, testing not only his knowledge but the very core of who he was. After being left alone with only a pat on the shoulder, uncertainty gripped him. Vulnerable and exposed, he felt the Jedi's cold detachment, their eyes piercing through him as if searching his very soul. They seemed to treat him no better than a street urchin, scrutinizing him without a single word of comfort or welcome. As soon as Qui-Gon departed, they began their relentless questioning, testing his memory and knowledge, making him feel like a burden they had to endure after Qui-Gon brought him and his companion back from Tatooine. The Jedi were nothing like the ones he'd heard of in stories. He recognized a few by name, thanks to Qui-Gon's brief introductions, but two stood out. One, a stern figure whose presence suggested leadership, and another, frail and ancient, almost too weak to belong to such a revered order. His thoughts briefly wandered, but he quickly pushed them aside as the interrogation continued, demanding answers to everything and testing his resolve. In a world where memories fade but echoes persist, Revan Skywalker, a boy with a past he can't fully grasp, stands on the brink of destiny. Plagued by visions of a life as a galactic warlord, his bond with his younger brother, Anakin, becomes a silent tension between light and shadow. The Jedi Council, uncertain of his true identity, watches him closely, unsure whether he's a Jedi in training or the reincarnation of the dreaded Darth Revan. As Revan's past haunts him, Padme Amidala senses something greater within him, something both beautiful and terrifying. But Revan, caught between two worlds, struggles to hold on to who he is and what he is becoming, as dreams of betrayal and flames twist his reality. He is a boy, a brother, and possibly the galaxy's last hope or its darkest future. Revan was tormented by a fear that wasn't his own. He feared for his mother, left behind on Tatooine after he and his brother Anakin had moved on. With only C-3PO and HK as her guardians, how could she be safe without Revan by her side? He missed her cooking, her hugs, her smile that could outshine the twin suns. But now, with Padme by his side, he couldn't escape the worry. His thoughts were interrupted by a Jedi, stroking his white beard, who could sense his anxiety. "Your thoughts dwell on your mother," the Jedi remarked, seeing right through him. It was a reminder that even across the galaxy, his past was never far behind. In the heart of the council chamber, the young man stood, anxiety written on his face as the weight of the Jedi Council's disapproval pressed on him. Yoda's green eyes, ancient and knowing, locked with his blue ones, urging him to control his emotions. Mace Windu, his voice calm yet firm, advised him to be mindful of his feelings. Yet, for the boy, this felt like a reprimand for something as simple as missing his mother. "I miss her," he confessed, the words escaping his lips before he could stop them, only to be met with the cold gaze of the council. Disappointment seemed to linger in the air. Had he said something wrong? Why was it a crime to care for someone, especially the woman who gave him life? He had always heard that Jedi were heroes, protectors of the weak, yet in this moment, his concern for his mother's safety seemed like a flaw in their eyes. As the council remained unmoved, the young man felt a growing anger, not just at their dismissal, but at the feeling that no one cared for the well-being of his mother. With his piercing green eyes, Yoda warned the young man to be mindful of his emotions. Mace Windu too cautioned him, his gaze sharp as the boy stood at the center of the room, feeling as though his natural concern for his mother's safety was being scorned. "I miss her," the boy admitted, his voice laced with vulnerability, but the council only responded with disdain, their eyes cold and distant. Was it wrong to care about someone, especially your own mother? In the stories he'd heard, the Jedi were heroes who fought for the safety of others. Yet here he was, feeling guilty for caring. The disinterest they showed toward his mother's welfare made no sense to him. Anger rose in his chest. How could they dismiss something so pure as love and concern for a family member? Anakin's temper flared as the Jedi Master accused him of being overly attached to his mother, warning that he might fall to the darkness. Confused and hurt, Anakin pushed back, questioning if caring for people was now a crime. His voice trembled with frustration as he pointed out the Jedi's supposed commitment to caring for others. A voice from the shadows responded, attempting to clarify that the Jedi did indeed care, but Anakin's heart burned with a more personal plea. Why was his love for his mother treated as a flaw? The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air as he searched the faces around him for answers. Despite the tension, the Jedi assured him that caring was not wrong, but the deeper, unspoken truths of the Force loomed large. As always, Yoda sighed deeply as he watched the young Skywalker, a hint of concern in his gaze. "Dangerous? It can be," he warned. "How can it be dangerous to care for someone you love?" Skywalker asked, bewildered by the old Jedi's caution. "Fear for your mother, you do. Fear is a path to the dark side," Yoda replied cryptically. "Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering." Anakin, trying to shake off the weight of the conversation, boldly declared, "I'm not afraid." He wanted to move past this moment, but the truth lingered, an unspoken shadow hanging in the air. Revan's life is a blur of shadows, fear, and fleeting moments of hope. Even amidst the struggles of a young boy caught between the weight of prophecy and an uncertain future, he finds himself in a conflict more complex than any battle he's fought before. The council may have been right about his anger, but the truth of it lay not in the fear of losing his mother, as they assumed, but in the indifference of those around him to her suffering. Worse still, they scorned him for caring. What stung the most was the contrast between their cold dismissal and the warmth of Qui. Gon's genuine concern for him, his brother, and their mother, a Jedi who not only cared, but had once tried to free them from the chains of slavery. That was the Jedi Revan longed to be. As his brother Anakin sat in his own meeting with the council, Revan was left to his thoughts, accompanied by the Gungan who had kept him company while waiting for Qui-Gon's return. Time passed, but the echoes of the past loomed large, and the path ahead was clouded with doubt and destiny's grasp. He thought the Jedi would be back by now. After all, how long could a simple meeting take? They were just asking his younger brother a few questions, or so he assumed. But hours had passed. Maybe they were being thorough in their investigation. He figured the Jedi would be careful when evaluating potential members for their order, but personally, he couldn't see why it mattered. The Jedi needed them far more than they needed the Jedi. Everyone knew that. And besides, who was lining up to join them these days? It seemed the Jedi couldn't afford to turn anyone away, especially now that they had faded into obscurity. These days, people were more familiar with the Republic and the Senate than the Jedi. Anakin stood, eyes wide, as the words fell from Revan's lips, detailing the items they had found. A cup from a distant world, a speeder that once raced through the bustling streets of Hutt's domain, his voice echoing through the tense silence of the room. Grandmaster Mace nodded approvingly, his gaze intense. Good, young one," he murmured, eyes focused on Anakin. The moment felt heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. "How do you feel?" he asked, breaking the stillness. Anakin's breath was cold, his voice a soft admission. "Cold, sir." There was no room for falsehoods here. Afraid, are you? The Jedi Master probed, sensing something deeper. Anakin paused, uncertainty flickering behind his youthful gaze as he hesitated to answer. Revan didn't care whether the Jedi accepted him. Anakin's dream was what mattered. He marched toward the Queen's antechamber, flinging the doors open with the Force, fully aware the Jedi would disapprove. But to him, not using the Force was like severing a limb. Inside, Padme stood in a new set of royal attire again. Honestly, she changed clothes more in one day than he did in a week. Her eyes sparkled with amusement, but her face stayed unreadable as she said coolly, "It is expected of royalty, and I have an image to keep up as is tradition." Revan couldn't help but sneer at the idea. Through their shared connection in the Force, he scoffed, "You just want an excuse to wear something new, don't you? What better time than a gathering of stuck-up nobles?" "You really don't like them, do you?" came the reply. "I don't like anyone who thinks they're superior to others," Revan responded, his words flowing effortlessly as he made his way toward Padme, scanning the room for her handmaidens or Captain Panaka. "Not everyone here is like that," the other person argued. "Maybe not," Revan agreed, stepping into the next room where a pair of dresses lay across a bed that seemed large enough to fit an entire family. "But more often than not, people here will smile at you while plotting against you behind your back." Revan Skywalker, a young boy from Tatooine, is more than just a survivor. He's haunted by memories of a past life as a galactic warlord. As he roams Coruscant with his brother Anakin, the line between his present and past begins to blur, revealing battles, betrayals, and a dark destiny tied to the Starforge. Is he the Jedi in training everyone believes, or the reincarnation of Darth Revan? As the Jedi Council debates his fate, Padme Amidala feels drawn to the mysterious boy whose silence carries the weight of galaxies. But with shadows in his eyes, Revan struggles to understand who he is and what his future holds. His journey unfolds against a backdrop of visions, prophecies, and a destiny neither he nor those around him can escape. Revan smirked with mischief, his eyes gleaming as he teased, "I can already picture it. Dusty overalls and working tirelessly to scrub every corner of our humble place. How's your cooking and cleaning?" The playful remark earned a light shove from Padme, causing Revan to laugh before his expression shifted to something more serious. "But I couldn't help but notice you're alone. Where are the rest of your handmaidens?" Padme's response was simple yet telling. "I told them to take a break. I just needed some time to myself." Revan raised an eyebrow, his tone sharp with curiosity. "You let Sabe loose on the city?" She tilted her head, puzzled. As he asked if that had been wise, her answer was instant, "Of course, why wouldn't it be?" But the dark-haired boy from Tatooine wasn't convinced. "You kidding?" She makes Tatooine nights feel warm. His dry remark earned a playful eye roll from her. He shook his head with mock sympathy. "I pity anyone foolish enough to cross her, or worse, try small talk." She scoffed, amused. "She's not that bad," she insisted, though even she couldn't deny the edge that lingered behind the other girl's gaze. Revan paused, trying to find the perfect words to describe the situation. "Not easy to get along with for those who don't know her," he commented. "Not exactly the term I'd use," he quipped, but Padme chose not to engage. "But Sabe, along with the rest of my handmaidens, are unwavering in their duties and fiercely loyal to both me and the crown," she stated firmly. Revan shrugged, indifferent, making his way to the bed. "If I were you, or the one training them to be bodyguards for your monarchy, I'd suggest they work on being more social." "They sound too much like droids," he remarked as he plopped down on the bed, testing its bounce. "Not bad," he muttered, clearly more interested in the bed than the conversation. In a world where the echoes of a forgotten war stir within his mind, Revan Skywalker feels the weight of both past and present. Despite his brother Anakin's optimism, Revan's dark visions linger, blurring the lines between dreams and reality. As they navigate the gleaming, deceptive beauty of Coruscant, Revan's burden is heavy, haunted by memories of betrayal, power, and a legacy tied to a forgotten name. Amidst it all, Padme Amidala, with her quiet strength, finds herself drawn to this boy who carries the universe's weight in his silence. Their conversations, steeped in uncertainty and trust, are laced with a subtle tension as Revan doubts his place among the Jedi, while Padme insists that they are more than just allies, they are friends, even if Revan cannot yet see it. As the Jedi Council debates his fate, the past threatens to resurface, and Revan's true destiny remains hidden in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. She stared back at him, her gaze unwavering, locking onto those strangely familiar gray eyes. A sense of deja vu washed over her ever since she had first looked into them back at that wretched shop. Something felt eerily familiar. She was almost certain she had seen those eyes before, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't place where. "You haven't even seen them yet," she said, still staring intently. "Or at least, I don't think you have." "No, I haven't," he replied, meeting her gaze with calm certainty. "But call it a gut feeling." "I already know how this ends." Revan, haunted by memories of a past life as a galactic warlord, confronts a harsh reality on Coruscant with his younger brother, Anakin. Though he has been accepted into the Jedi, the Council's hesitation is palpable. Revan fears they will keep him and Anakin apart, and this fear pushes him to reveal to Padme that their connection is not just familial, it is a curse. Padme, confused, dismisses the idea as paranoid, unable to grasp why their bond would be seen as dangerous. But Revan, locking eyes with her, conveys a seriousness she's never witnessed before, hinting at a dark truth. Their shared bloodline is more than just a simple family tie. It's a legacy of betrayal and conflict, and it might tear them apart before they even understand why. Revan tried to explain to Padme, it's not really a crime, just more of a concern. "You know, Anakin and I were raised by our mother, and that alone would worry them." Padme blinked, confused. "Raised by your own mother? What's wrong with that?" she asked. "Nothing, unless you're a Jedi," Revan replied. "Usually, younglings are brought to the temple as infants to avoid forming attachments with their parents, attachments that could eventually lead them to the dark side. But Anakin and I, we've spent our entire lives with our mother and formed that attachment. It's different for us." In a galaxy of whispered fears and uncertain futures, a chilling truth emerges. Revan, once a slave on Tatooine, is not just haunted by forgotten memories, but by a legacy forged in darkness. As he and his younger brother Anakin walk the streets of Coruscant, Revan's visions pull him back to a life as a galactic warlord, where brotherhood crumbled into betrayal and power was twisted by the dark side. The Jedi Council, wary of the dangerous potential within Revan, plans to separate him from Anakin, fearing that any harm to their mother might send the brothers down a path of vengeance. But this doesn't sit well with Padme, who, infuriated by the Jedi's plan, cries out against their manipulative tactics. Revan, with a calm yet heavy heart, reminds her that such actions have been the norm for centuries, an unyielding tradition that seems impossible to break. With each passing moment, Revan teeters on the edge of destiny, caught between the man he is becoming and the dark history he can't escape. The Jedi Order forbids its members from having families to prevent attachment in the risk of falling to the dark side. "What? How can they do this? It's outrageous! It's unfair!" she protested, feeling the injustice deeply. "Such is the way of the Jedi," he responded calmly, not understanding why she was so upset, especially when she wasn't even trying to join the Order. "Has it never crossed your mind why none of the Jedi still in the Order have their own families?" he asked. "I just thought they kept it to themselves," she replied. "Afraid not," he said, offering the harsh truth. Revan shrugged, not understanding the problem. "It works for the Jedi, considering their code forbids them from loving. Or at least tries to. Seems pretty foolish to me. Denying their emotions makes them no better than droids. They claim empathy for all living creatures, but how can they truly empathize if they refuse to feel? But enough about me." He shifted his focus, his gaze softening as he looked at her. "How are you doing?" Revan, with a casual shrug, explained his take on relationships, drawing a comparison to the Jedi's code, which, in his eyes, foolishly denies emotions. He viewed their attempt to suppress feelings as a futile effort, one that stripped them of their humanity, reducing them to mere machines. According to him, true empathy could never exist without genuine emotion. He soon shifted the conversation, now turning his gaze to Padme. His tone softened, showing a rare moment of curiosity. "But enough about me. How are you doing?" Revan couldn't believe the outcome, his voice cautious as he approached Padme, sensing the tension in the room. "I can't imagine that you got the result you were expecting or hoping for," he murmured, aware that he was treading carefully around the painful decision made by the Senate. Padme remained silent, her gaze drifting away from him as she turned her back, unwilling to let him see the turmoil she felt. As she paced the room, her unease palpable, Revan spoke again, trying to reassure her. "You can talk to me, Padme. If you're worried that I might judge you, you have nothing to fear. Why would a queen care what a simple peasant thinks?" Despite the layers of white makeup hiding her emotions, a faint smile tugged at her lips, even as her anxiety and self-doubt rippled through the Force. After what felt like an eternity of silence, Padme gathered the courage to voice the doubt that had been eating away at her for hours. Padme stood, her face filled with doubt, looking to Revan for guidance. "Did I do the right thing?" she asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. "With Valorum, I mean. He's been our greatest ally, and I just betrayed him. So easily." Revan, deep in thought, gazed downward before lifting his eyes to meet hers. "It depends on what your definition of right is," he replied carefully, choosing his words with caution. He took a moment to think, then added, "Do I think it was right to turn your back on an ally, especially when you're surrounded by danger? No, I don't think you made the right choice." Padme's face fell, shame and self-loathing evident in her expression as his words hit home. As the Queen, she faces a hard truth. Sometimes, to protect her people, she must put aside her own morals. The man beside her speaks with conviction, reminding her that history will judge her not for waiting patiently while the Senate debated, but for taking action to safeguard those she loves. The cost of leadership isn't always clear or easy, and she wonders if she's ready to bear the weight of decisions made in the shadows of the throne. They stand close, the tension palpable, as her whisper reveals the struggle within her, how simple it all seems when framed in words, but how heavy the burden is in reality. Revan couldn't shake the feeling that Padme was an old friend who had returned to his life after years of absence. As he gazed into her warm brown eyes, a sense of guilt washed over him, though he couldn't pinpoint why, followed by a deep regret. "Or maybe you're just full of yourself." Padme shot back, refusing to back down from the boy she found herself drawn to, a boy she could swear she'd met before even stepping into Watto's shop. As she stared into his striking gray eyes, she felt a strange happiness, a contentment she hadn't experienced in a long time, even before she'd been crowned queen. For the first time in ages, she felt like everything was right in the world again, especially now that he was finally back with her. "Maybe I am?" he murmured with a husky grin, teasing as he noticed her flustered expression. In the quiet room, the tension was palpable as two figures locked eyes. One of them, a regal woman, couldn't help but succumb to the moment, her desire overpowering reason. She stepped closer, lifted herself on her tiptoes, and in one swift movement, her arms wrapped around his neck, pulling him into a kiss. Her body acted on instinct, as if it had a will of its own. The man, Revan, frozen at first, was caught in surprise. He had never experienced anything like this before. His past was a blur of strange memories, and the only other women he'd seen had been part of a darker, distant world. But now, faced with the warmth of her embrace, he abandoned his thoughts and responded, deepening the kiss, pulling her even closer. For a brief, perfect moment, everything else disappeared. But fate had other plans. The door swung open, interrupting the intimate moment as the captain and handmaidens entered, unaware of the silent storm that had just passed through the room. The captain, standing in the doorway, paused mid-sentence as he and the handmaidens witnessed something unexpected. Their beloved ruler, the queen, caught in the midst of a passionate kiss with the former slave they had brought back from Tatooine. Padme quickly pulled away, blushing furiously, but her face paint cleverly concealed the redness from the others. Revan, however, was not as fortunate, drawing a fierce glare from the captain. The handmaidens, most of whom struggled to hold back laughter, found it hard to resist the awkwardness of the moment. "You!" the captain snapped, turning on Revan with fury in his eyes. "How dare you kiss my queen?" he sneered, his hand hovering over his weapon, the temptation to act on his anger evident. "Did he force himself on you, your highness?" the captain demanded. "Well, technically she started it," Padme replied, much to the captain's dismay. The queen was caught off guard, quickly nudging her companion with an embarrassed elbow after forgetting the door wasn't locked. Kissing him certainly wasn't part of her plans. "Of course not, Captain," she reassured her confidant, brushing it off. But one of the handmaidens couldn't resist, her eyes twinkling from beneath her hooded robe. "What were you both doing?" she asked, pressing further. The queen shot a glare her way, one that promised dire consequences if she didn't let it go. "We were." Revan suddenly paused, remembering his meeting with the Jedi. He awkwardly cleared his throat and mentioned, "I'm sure Qui-Gon is already looking for me. I should leave now." With that, he quickly bowed, bidding farewell to the captain and the others, sending a sly wink to Padme before dashing off. But not without delivering one last comment to Padme that made her blush and feel a mix of emotions. "Thanks for the kiss. We'll have to do it again sometime," he teased, leaving her flustered and wanting to throttle him. The next chapter of the Return of the Prodigal Knight and the Phantom Menace unfolds with raw intensity. The Council's harsh reaction may seem extreme, but considering their established views, especially the unyielding stance of one particular master who once branded a fallen Jedi as nothing more than a traitor, it's chillingly in character. The sudden kiss between Revan and Padme may feel abrupt, yet after 10 chapters of lingering tension and unspoken glances, the moment lands like a spark in dry brush. They're both just 14, caught in a galaxy, pulling them into roles far beyond their years. And as the writer closes the scene, a question lingers like a whisper through the Force. Should Revan remember everything? His rise? His fall? His death now? Or only when the Clone Wars begin? The dice is mid-roll, and fate waits for no one. Revan suddenly paused, remembering his meeting with the Jedi. He awkwardly cleared his throat and mentioned, "I'm sure Qui-Gon is already looking for me. I should leave now." With that, he quickly bowed, bidding farewell to the captain and the others, sending a sly wink to Padme before dashing off. But not without delivering one last comment to Padme that made her blush and feel a mix of emotions. "Thanks for the kiss. We'll have to do it again sometime," he teased, leaving her flustered and wanting to throttle him. The next chapter of the Return of the Prodigal Knight and the Phantom Menace unfolds with raw intensity. The Council's harsh reaction may seem extreme, but considering their established views, especially the unyielding stance of one particular master who once branded a fallen Jedi as nothing more than a traitor, it's chillingly in character. The sudden kiss between Revan and Padme may feel abrupt, yet after 10 chapters of lingering tension and unspoken glances, the moment lands like a spark in dry brush. They're both just 14, caught in a galaxy pulling them into roles far beyond their years, and as the writer closes the scene, a question lingers like a whisper through the Force. Should Revan remember everything? His rise, his fall, his death now, or only when the Clone Wars begin? The dice is mid-roll, and fate waits for no one.